I'm Archita Fritz, and I help CEOs and boards scale and grow into new markets. I'm a keynote speaker and a board member. We all grow up, and I grew up in India, and it was all about performance, and performance meant good grades, achievements, and accolades. And a lot of us then go through adulthood chasing somebody else's version of success. And so I'm going to be challenging the audience to rethink where their need for being a high performer comes from. Does it come from pressure, or does it come from purpose? I talk about this in my talk. So to me, I didn't play any sport, because in India, you don't play volleyball or football for fun. You go after education as a sport. So that mentality of training like an Olympian essentially for exams, the competitiveness that is involved, helped bring the sportsmanship idea. But in my early 20s is when I discovered how sport can help you truly feel joy in your body. And then as a leader, as things get really difficult, because you'll be making difficult decisions, sports gives you a chance to go back and discover that joy. And that's what it's been for me. And so that's kind of my connection between the three, is finding the joy across all of these three areas.
Hello, Belfast. Guten Abend from Düsseldorf, Germany. So excited to be here. So let me take you to a girl, all of 10 years old, that each and every one of you might recognize. Her hair is neatly combed. Her uniform is nicely pressed. And of course, her shoes are polished. She's standing in front of a mirror in a hallway, and she's adjusting not her shirt, but her worth. Today, she's getting an award, but she's not really that excited about the award, because today, she finally claims that she belongs. Today, she finally can claim that she is worth it, because to her, awards meant everything. What she doesn't know yet is that she is in the performance of her life. Not for an audience, not for applause, but for safety, for approval. And she is rehearsing who to become. And maybe you know that moment. Maybe before you entered this auditorium, you fixed your face before you felt your feelings. Before that Zoom call, that boardroom meeting, that Teams event, where you held your body still so you could look put together. So you adjusted your tone before someone asked you to. And we've all learned how to read a room before we read the feelings in our own heart. And we call it peak performance, we call it leadership, and we celebrate it. But we know better. It's not being at your peak, it's not leadership, it's a lifelong audition for safety. And if you're nodding, and I see some head nods here, or if a part of you is saying, I don't know what she's talking about, but the rest of your body is like, oh no, she sees me? Good. Because I am you. So let me take you to where it started. In front of a mirror in my hallway in Bangalore, India. A mirror, 10 years old, school uniform pressed, and a Princess Diana cut. Because in post-colonial India, in the 90s, a Princess Diana cut was all the rage for the moms if you wanted your daughters to look put together. And I don't even remember what award I was going to get while I was looking at myself in the mirror. But it had to do something with academics, because that was my thing. Because in India, you see, education is not an institution, it's not a system, it's a blood sport, a bloodbath. We chase grades like they're Olympic medals. We chase college admissions like your life depends on it. Because playing volleyball and football for fun, no, you don't do that. Because you're trying to dodge 2 million other kids to land in the top 1,000 at the end of your A levels so you can be in the top 1%. Because if you're not in the top 1%, it's shame, shame, shame. No good college admissions and no pride in your parents' eyes. So you bet I trained like an Olympian. I did test drills, pasted test documents all over my wall, had cue cards from my mom, had tutors coming in and out, and my mom was the Olympic coach of do not disappoint your family. And she reminded me many times, and my sister, over and over. And we had those aunties, who would check on our test scores. The second aunt, the second cousin of the third aunt's secretary's aunt who would phone my mom, and did you see what your daughter got? Like they were tracking FIFA World Cup scores. It was absurd. So for me, education was the sport. I was a competitor. I was committed to winning. And I knew through all of this how to always be put together. But that morning, while I stood in front of that mirror, I wasn't thinking about grades. I was thinking about that man. Now, Sinead said this part of the story references sexual abuse. So I'll be speaking about it with care, but if you do need a moment, it's absolutely okay. So this man from my family, he always noticed me, always put me onto his lap on family trips, and touched me in ways I didn't understand. And that made me think I was special. That made me feel like I was appreciated. And I thought to myself, oh, got to keep performing, to be agreeable, to be special. So that day, as I walked out of that hallway and stepped out into our living room, that man was there in his white navy uniform, hands in his pocket, and he looked me up and down, and he said, "You look really put together." And in that moment, snap, everything just clicked. I felt this pit in my stomach. Those car rides where his wandering hands made me close my legs because I didn't know what was happening. When I felt this pit in my stomach, it all started to make sense. And I didn't have language for this, but I knew it was not affection because no one told me anything otherwise. I knew it was violation. I knew it was control. And so I put my head down and I kept walking because all I knew was I needed to be agreeable, I needed to be mature, and most importantly, I needed to be put together, and I was excellent at this. Because performance is what girls like me were raised to do. To keep the peace, to be mature. And the story I started telling myself from that day forward, and from, quite frankly, many decades since, Archita, you wanted this. At 8, you asked for this. You made it happen. So I want to offer a different lens today. Now, while peak performance is the name of this keynote, I will not be providing 5 a.m. cold plunge hacks or your favorite thing to see on your LinkedIn feed, how to get 10 productivity hacks to be in the top 1%. No, that's not this keynote, okay? Because for some of us, especially those who have lived on the margins, peak performance wasn't a goal. It was a defense mechanism, a way to stay safe, a way to stay seen, and a way to be spared. And if that's true for you, then what we call peak for all of us might just be survival in some good lighting. Now, you see, even at 10 years old, I knew something was so wrong. I knew I needed to find a way to protect myself, but I didn't know who to go to. So I went to my best friend, my granddad. I'm going to cry. I lost him 5 years ago. My best friend. I called him Tata, okay? And I didn't have words to say anything, but I went up to him and I said, if this man ever comes home and mom and dad are not around, can you please scare the fuck out of him? And I didn't say that because I would get smacked, but scare the heck out of him and get him out of the house. And I don't know if he saw the fear in my eyes, he saw the trembling in my voice, he nodded. And because I knew that next time the man came, something would get really bad. And so he did come. I saw him walking down the street. I ran up to my room. I shut the door. I put my hand on the keyhole. I put my feet on the bottom of the crack to make sure my shadow won't show through. And I heard his footsteps coming up. I could feel my heart beating. And I think he could hear it from across the door. And he said, I know you're in there. And then, just then, my granddad shouted from the bottom of the stairs, if I ever see you near her ever again, you will never hear the end of it. He left. I saw him at family functions. I saw him in other places, but he never came next to me. And that day, my granddad, Tata, gave me something no award, medal, or test score ever could. He saw me. He chose me. No proof, no explanation, just presence. And that, my friends, was my first flicker of safety. And I've thought about that moment a lot since. 12 years into my marriage, when I finally told my husband, when I finally told my sister, who I text every day, the sun is shining. Can I wear this dress? I had never told her all these years. I finally told her, my mom and dad. And they all surrounded me with love, and I was so appreciative. But how many of us needed just one person, not to fix it, not to explain it, but just to stand by the door and say, I believe you. You don't have to prove it. So maybe the invitation is this. Can you be that voice for someone? But most importantly, can you be the voice for yourself? That voice that you can recognize the moment you were seen and make it count. Can you be that voice for yourself, ladies and gentlemen? Can I hear a hell yes? Yes, I love to hear that. And I wish I could tell you that after this moment, things changed. I stopped chasing medals, I stopped chasing awards. Oh, but absolutely not. So unlike Lisa, I love to swear, so it's gonna come out. But I didn't slow down, I doubled down. Because here's what happens when a child carries shame. She doesn't pause, she performs. Yes? She builds stories around that wound. She collects awards just to survive. And I'm not the only one. Research from CDC's Adverse Childhood Experiences show that childhood trauma manifests and lives in memory. It rewires our brain for perfectionism, for vigilance, and for performance. And this is what my story and my body armor started telling me. If I just do more, they'll see my value, of course. If I excel enough, this memory will quiet. And it did for decades. If I never rest, they'll never question me. And maybe you have felt the cost of peak performance in some way, shape, or form. Maybe your smile has been a survivor. Maybe that room that you lead is also the room where you hold your breath. Because what I have just told you, the story I buried under awards and medals, it's not rare. We all have some version of the story. It's just rarely said aloud. And if we are not careful, we build teams, we build communities, and we build cultures with peak performance, which is often just pain disguised as productivity. Because yes, performance can come from purpose. But here's the reframe. We hear this all the time, more often than we'd admit. Performance comes from pressure for a lot of us. So for a long time, many decades, I didn't just chase peak performance, I became it. Overachievement, accolades, expat titles, product launches. I feel so good performing about it right now too, right? 120 plus countries, everything. But then the story turned into something, and it morphed into something completely different. It was small, it kept me small, but it was still protective. I am not an athlete. And it sounds harmless, right? It almost sounds funny. But it was armor. It was my protection. It was code for my body is not meant for joy. My body is not meant to feel freedom. My body is not a place I trust. My body is for performance. And me, I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to go after joy because I saw athletes and I felt like they lived in their body. They embodied that joy and they lived and belonged there. But my body wasn't a place I lived in. It was a place I protected. I didn't trust it, I managed it, all so I could stay safe. So while the world clapped and I stacked my wins, I started looking back at my life and I noticed that my body was rewiring and repositioning this appetite for performance. But it didn't happen in one full whoosh, one full go. It happened in flickers over time. So on my 13th birthday, when I begged my dad, I saw this lovely ad on TV. And it was for the Miss India bicycle. Who wouldn't want a Miss India bicycle? Purple, basket, festoons, everything, all of it. And she ruled the road. Now, come on, they didn't have the hashtag back then, but she ruled the road. This was the 90s. And I was like, I want to rule the road, Dad. And he's like, girl, I have never seen you ride a bike. I was like, I don't care. I want that bike. So he relented. He's a freaking amazing dad. And he got me that bike. I got on that bike because, see, the bike it was just a representation of what my body could feel, what my body could experience just for me. So I got on that bike, so proud, all of 13 years old. I biked up the street, and I biked down the street, and I parked it. Forever. Forever. Because it wasn't about the riding, it was the possibility of choosing something for me, for my body to move, because I wanted it to move. A flicker. And then there was volleyball. The only woman engineer on a male-dominated team. I was an intern, all of 19 years old, in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Anyone heard of Kalamazoo, Michigan? Yes? All right, go from Kalamazoo. All right. So Kalamazoo, Michigan, this brown girl shows up, fresh off the boat, gets into this male adrenaline-filled team, all male engineering team, who White River rafted and did ultra marathons for fun. Who the heck does this stuff for fun? And every Thursday, they would go to Romance Road Parkway. And on their way, they'd say, Archita, you in? We're going to play beach volleyball. And I'd nod my head vigorously and scream inside, who the heck wants to dive head first into sand for fun? But I'd nod, because when you're a brown woman on an immigrant visa working her way to a work visa, your career depends on it, on nodding and showing up. And so that's what I did. I showed up, not because that game brought me joy, not because I loved it, because not showing up felt worse than failing. Not a flicker, but a flare of survival. Because sometimes just staying in the game is all the strategy you have. And then came the 5Ks, my first international marketing job. I'm sitting at my desk, It's 5 p.m. on a Friday, and my vice president of marketing, Don Pearley, he'll be so proud if he heard his name up here on stage, he walked down to my table and he dropped a registration form. And he's like, Archita, I've signed up the entire marketing team for a 5K on Sunday. You're showing up at 6:45 a.m. And I'm like, what the? And in my head, I'm like, what is this white people nonsense? I don't run for fun? What the heck? But I showed up on that Sunday. I borrowed some sneakers. I borrowed some Resolve from some of my friends who ran all the time. I jogged. I whizzed. A man who seemed 80 at that time, probably was just a young lad in his 50s, ran right past me. A dad pushing twins in a stroller and a dog ran right past me. But I finished. And for a second, as I crossed that finish line, I felt something. I felt another flicker, not victory, not pride, but joy. Just to move in my body for myself. You know that feeling when for a very brief moment you're not performing anymore and you just feel the joy of what you were doing? When the joy is louder than the pressure, when the joy is louder than that applause, when it doesn't feel like earning anything, just being in it. And that 5K turned into a rhythm. From there, we ran midnight races in Stockholm. To this day, 15 years married with this lovely man who's an Ironman triathlete. We run every year for our anniversary somewhere around the world, a mountain run up an Alaskan mountain, half marathons, a run while 7 months pregnant, pulled in my 3 kids. We do a race every single year. Not a flex. None of this was a flex. It was a flicker. Proof that I could move without performing. That I could exist without earning the need to be loved. And still I said it every single time when I pinned my bib, when I tied my shoelaces, when I got to that start line, when I got to that finish line. I am not an athlete. Because I still thought freedom had to be earned. And then came Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, an international sales event. I delivered the opening keynote, crushed it, of course. And right at the awards ceremony, the DJ dropped a beat. Where's Emily? Emily. Oh, he dropped a beat where my favorite, Shakira's Your Hips Don't Lie. All right? So you don't go here and you don't dance, corporate head nodding, side shimming. You shake your body. You feel it. And I felt it. Full breath, hips moving, hair flying, really enjoying the moment. I wasn't wondering if I belonged, just joy. And then the next morning, a senior male leader pulled me aside. It's an Indian man. Sat down next to me at breakfast and said, Archita, I didn't know you were married. Not from the way you were dancing last night. Ladies, just like that, shame, immediate. Because you know that moment when you just start feeling joy, when you just start turning up the light on all your brilliance, someone comes in and starts dimming your light. Someone comes in and starts pushing you off stage. Someone comes in not because you're not right, because they're scared of your freedom. And that's what I felt. Because when you're rewriting your story, the old one shows up with a clipboard and that old script. And peak performance, when it's built on pain, it comes with a delicious, chocolate-sprinkled side of shame. You ever had one of those moments? The moment you were dancing, laughing, raising your voice, raising your hand, stepping up into your light, and you got shut down. So when you get shut down, what do? You polish, you perform, you double down. And so I launched a podcast because everybody was launching podcasts. It was 2019. Yes, that's what I did. Launched a podcast, top 3% globally, felt really good. But I was still performing and still whispering to myself, I am not an athlete. Not because I couldn't move, because I hadn't felt safe yet in the movement. Because even in the wins, I was still trying to prove I belonged. Maybe you've felt that too. The moment after the promotion, the moment after you get off a client call and it feels like a big win, something inside you quietly whispers, well, you weren't really good enough. Where joy should land, but shame shows up first. Where applause fades and the doubt returns louder than ever. But I started noticing something. My body had already started opting out of this performance. I had all these flickers, the Miss India bicycle, that freedom, the 5K, the volleyball, all tiny flickers, giving me permission to start stepping out of my performance. And I realized something. Peak performance had become my protector and my protection, but it would never be my power. And then Lisa and Sinead called. And they're like, Archita, we'd love for you to keynote the closing of Impact Players. It's at the intersection of sports and business. And I nodded and I was like, oh my gosh, ladies, I am so grateful. Thank you. I'm honored. I closed the laptop. I turned around and I screamed internally, but I am not an athlete. And it was just code for, I don't belong. I don't know what value I'm going to add. But it was a doubt. It was just an old reflex, a groove in my brain that I had run many miles in, literally. But this time, I did shut it down. I wrote my outline, I sent it to them, and I said, this is the most honest keynote I have ever written. And it's not perfect. It's still work in progress, but I'm okay with it because that's what this is. It's a practice. It's not a speech. And it made me pause because when you start telling the truth, the real truth, all those internal voices and the space that those old stories were taking up start disappearing. Starts becoming quieter. And you start recognizing the space you start taking up in rooms, and that becomes louder. Your power becomes louder. Your ability to shift and change and drive impact becomes louder. You realize how much space those old stories were taking up. So I'm going to ask you, how many times have you said, yes, of course, I'd love to do that for you, when what you meant was, God, I hope I'm good enough. Yes, we've done that. So let me ask you something, and I'm going to invite you to do something for me. What is that one story, that first line of your story, that is waiting to be rewritten? That one story that sits in your chest that you haven't said out loud yet? Is it I'm too much? Is it I should be grateful for what I have? Is it I'm not ready? Or is it rest is for those people? Because here's the truth, rewriting isn't a tidy TED Talk ending. It's not clean. It might show up sweaty. It might show up shaky. It might show up still in progress. And friends, this is where you stop nodding politely for me right now. You stop clapping internally for my story, and you start owning yours. Because this isn't about more information, it's about interruption, mid-sentence right here. So if it feels comfortable, close your eyes for me. Think about that opening scene of that story you've been living, that story that's waiting to be rewritten. Where were you? What did you believe? Where were you when you were living that story? And what did you believe? You can open your eyes for me. Hold on to that story. So I'm an engineer by training, so I love my numbers. We have about 400 people here, 10 untold stories. That's 4,000 moments we have silenced, swallowed, or spun into performance. And here's the thing about stories. They don't live in these lovely Venn diagram data models. They live in the body. They live in that breath that interrupts your rituals just as you are falling asleep at night and reminds you that you haven't taken the pen to start rewriting your story. And I want to tell you this. This is your opening. This is your flicker, and it doesn't have to be huge. It can just start with that no you did not take back, that nap you did not apologize for, the dance you had in that kitchen. It can be small, but it can be tiny interruptions to take back parts of that story that is begging to be rewritten. And here's one practice that I do with CEOs that I work with and private equity companies or individuals going through career transitions. It's really simple and it's changed a lot for me. Before every big room that I enter, before every pitch, before every boardroom, for every keynote, I say two things. One story I'm going to let go of, one story I'm going to invite in. Two sentences. One story I'm going to release, one story I'm going to rehearse. Try this for 30 days, and you are going to own every single room you show up in all your power, not from a place of pressure, but from a place of freedom. And if anything I said today cracked a tiny little bit, created a little bit of flickers, good. If it cracked open a story that you've held to your heart and have never shared with anybody else, here's my humble request for you. Please don't leave this room feeling inspired. Please leave this room to start rewriting that story. Because that 10-year-old girl with that lovely Princess Diana cut, the one in the hallway, she's not frozen in place, in silence. She's not adjusting her shirt. She's not adjusting her worth anymore. She's here with this mic, in this body, unapologetic, tethered to no one and nobody's approval. And this, my friends, is my rewrite. I'm so excited to share this. I am an athlete. I mean, so good saying it out loud. And it's how I've reclaimed that mirror. It's how I've stopped auditioning for love. And it didn't happen overnight. It's still work in progress, as I said. It's shaky, it's sweaty, but it's louder now. It's clearer, it's mine. And for you, it might sound like this. I'm already enough. I'm allowed to rest. I am powerful. So as you think about your rewrite, say it with your chest. Tattoo it to your breath and rewrite it where that lie used to once live. Because this room, this Impact Players room, is not filled with titles and talent, but it is high-integrity leaders rewriting what performance really means. Not the version built on fear, but the version built on freedom. So folks, you're going to say this with me because I love a good chant, all right? As you rewrite these stories, not just take inspiration from it. At the count of 5, we're going to say, we are Impact Players. Yes? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We are Impact Players. Like you mean it. We are Impact Players. Because yes, take the pen, take the mic, take the mirror, and for the love of everything you are, rewrite the damn story. And if you need a place to begin, remember the prompt. One story you're releasing, one story you're rehearsing. Try it for 30 days. And you might just remember what's always been true. You were never performing for power. You've had it all along. And when you come back to Impact Players next year, which I know each and every one of you will, don't just bring your name badge. Bring that new story. Bring that next sentence. Bring the version of you that didn't just hear this, but lived it for 365 days. That version of you, I can't wait to meet. See you next year.